Good morning. What a responsive group. Everybody was quiet almost right away. Please continue to help yourself to food at the back and find a spot. Good morning and welcome. Welcome to our first annual University of Saskatchewan Building Reconciliation Internal Forum. My name is Patty McDougall, and I serve as the Vice-Provost of Teaching and Learning, and I'm also a faculty member in psychology. I, along with my colleague, Dr. Alex Wilson, who you'll see in a moment, faculty member in Educational Foundations and our director of the Aboriginal Education Research Center, Alex and I will be your co-MCs for today. And as we gather here today for this important forum on building reconciliation, we recognize that we are on Treaty 6 territory and the homeland of the Métis, and we pay our respects to the First Nations and Métis ancestors of this place and reaffirm our relationship with one another. At this point, I would like to call upon Elder Louise Half to begin our forum today by offering a prayer. Elder Half, of course, is a very accomplished poet, former Poet Laureate of Saskatchewan. Many of you will know that. And every Monday morning, she comes to our Gordon Oaks Red Bear Student Center and leads a smudging ceremony offering her teachings to University of Saskatchewan students, faculty, and staff. She is a tremendous friend of the University of Saskatchewan, and we are very thankful, particularly today with the weather, we are very thankful that she is able to join us today.
Thank you, Patty. And good morning, everybody.
Thank you, Elder Half. Thank you so much for those words and for starting us off in the right way this morning. I just wanted to recognize, you heard Elder Half, I want to recognize our elder, Larry Oakes, the son of the late Gordon Oakes, who is here with us today. And I wanted to, if he's here in the room, recognize Elder Norm Fleury, Métis elder on our campus, but I don't see him. He has a presence that I know I would be able to pick out. He'll join us later today. So thank you everyone for joining us, for coming to spend the day doing this important work. A couple of practical matters for you. If you haven't been in Marquis for a while, you may want to know that the washrooms are actually downstairs. The upstairs washrooms are closed, so down on the first floor you'll find the washrooms. We are streaming the entire event today. That's us, that's our media production folks at the back. Our thanks to them. We're going to stream the event and we're going to archive everything that happens today so that we can retain that. I know that typically it's the end of the day when you hear all the thank yous, but I actually wanted to start off a little bit differently today. Throughout the course of today's event, you're going to see different people coming up on stage and participating in different ways, and we're very grateful for the investment that they've made in making today a success, for sure. So you'll see some folks come up, take center stage, but there's also people that you won't see today who have nevertheless been instrumental in helping to bring things together today. And just actually before I do that, go that way, I just realized Candace, okay, so I'll carry on. So just a word of thanks. People who have been instrumental, who have generously contributed to their ideas to today, how it should look and how it should feel. And these are people, by the way, who answered question after question from me, from our organizing team, with patience and with commitment. So I was pretty determined. Some of you who know me know that I can be quite determined. I was pretty determined that we were organizing this by and with Indigenous peoples. And for us, that's Indigenous faculty and staff. And so there were many people who contributed today, and I wanted you to hear me thank the people that have done that work. So very grateful to Larry Oakes, certainly, for coming and doing the pipe ceremony this morning, to Alex Wilson, who has contributed time and energy, to Sandra Duarte from the President's Office, and Jordan Sherbino, Danette Stang, Candace Wasakase Lafferty, to Eugene Arcand, who's sitting at the back, and I might just ask him to stand. You're going to see Eugene later in the day, a great friend of the University of Saskatchewan, residential school survivor, Saskatchewan member, participated and helped and gave advice to the TRC. You're going to hear more about Eugene. Eugene is here, and Eugene helps us keep things real. Blaine Favell is here. He's also at the back. You're going to hear more from him today. We're very grateful. Thanks to Bobby Mumm and to Trika McDonald and to Kristina Bidwell, to Jaris Swidrovich, to Stryker Calvez, to Val Arnaud-Pelche. Val, you will see later today. Val came this morning and smudged this room. And we're very grateful for her for doing that. Yvette Arcand, Matt Dunn, Donna Vandeveld, Verna St. Dennis, Caroline Tate, and a whole host of volunteers who have been doing a variety of different things. People from my portfolio, people from the library, from human resources, and from arts and science. We're very grateful to all of those people, and they've had a substantive contribution to the events of today. Before we jump too far, let me say a few things just to set the stage. In November of 2015, President Stoicheff and our then Chancellor, Blaine Favell, co-hosted a national forum on building reconciliation for Indigenous and university leaders from across Canada. And that event was co-chaired by Dr. Margaret Kovach, who is here today, and Dr. Keith Carlson, who might also be in the audience today or maybe joining us later today. And the purpose of that national forum was to begin to answer the question of how universities would respond to the calls to action that had been made by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. This was a very important event, but we knew, even at the time, that these conversations were only the beginning. It was also clear at the time that there were many engaged people at our university who couldn't be included in that event, couldn't be a part of the national event just because of the space limitations that we had in offering that. So we wanted to expand and grow these conversations at the U of S to make meaningful progress. So today is about continuing that on. There's been much progress at the U of S over the last year or more. You're going to hear about that today. Work happening in colleges, in schools, in departments, in units. And this forum serves as a way for people from across the university to share their work, to learn from one another, and to get inspired so that we're pursuing new opportunities and thinking in different ways about what's ahead for us. So today is our chance, the first chance, to continue and expand the important conversations happening at the U of S in the area of reconciliation. Now I'd like to turn it over to my co-MC, Alex Wilson.
Thank you, and thank you for the prayer to open us up. Tansi and Tutamek, good morning, friends and colleagues. Thank you for the honor to co-MC this event. When I was planning for this, I thought about my dad because my dad went to residential school in Prince Albert, which is, you know, the closest kind of town to my nation. And after that, he got his teaching credential here at U of S. And then in 1968, graduated from this university. At the time, though, like many other Indigenous people, was forced to make a choice because if you decided to go to university, then you had to give up your status as a citizen in your home nation. He was able to successfully challenge that and continue on with recognizing the treaty rights, and he didn't have to give up his status. But I'm just thinking about the years since then and what has happened in terms of reconciling our colonial history. And so today I think marks a significant occasion because we have an opportunity to come together and continue work that has started long before the TRC Commission came about. So we're honoring the legacy of our ancestors, and for me it's personal. I'm honoring the legacy of my parents who both graduated from the University of Saskatchewan. So we do have a lot of work to do. Today is just the beginning of that work. And given the number of people that are joining us here today for this forum, we can see that there is some commitment made by all of you. So I hope that today is a chance for everyone to learn what they can do in a respectful partnership in this journey. As you can see, we are live streaming, and if you're on Twitter, you can use the USask Twitter account or hashtag USask Reconciliation. And at this time, I'd like to call to the front Jennifer McGilvary to dance Fancy Shawl. Where's Jennifer? Following her dance, Jennifer will be speaking to us about the meaning of the dance. Jennifer's a student in the College of Nursing and is Vice President of the Indigenous Students Council. We're very happy that she has taken the time out of her busy schedule to be with us today. Welcome, Jennifer.
Hi, good morning. My name is Jennifer McGilvary. I'm a First Nations student from Muskeg Lake Cree Nation. I'm a student in the College of Nursing. I'm going to school to be a registered nurse. Today I'm going to be performing for you a fancy shawl dance. I dance fancy during the summertime because it's what I love to do. I'm passionate about it. I love being a part of my culture and creating and designing as well. I have many passions, and one of them is definitely sewing and beadwork. I've made my entire outfit from top to bottom, and I'm super proud of it because I love it. Today, I'm going to be dancing a song that has a straight, a crow hop, and a shuffle. In fancy, there's 4 types of songs. There's a shuffle, a straight, a crow hop, and a double beat. Double beat is my all-time favorite. I'm most passionate about it. I love it. It's the best. I feel most happy when I'm dancing it. But this is an exciting song. This one has all 3 together. That's what I'm going to be performing for you today. It's fast, it's quick, it's only 1 minute, 18 seconds. So, so I hope you enjoy it. Also, Truth and Reconciliation. This event I was interested in, so even if I wasn't performing, I was going to come here today just to watch and be a part of it. I am the Vice President of the Indigenous Students Council on campus, and I'm also part of the working group with the College of Nursing with Heather Exner-Pyro. And it's an interesting program, and I love being a part of it. So, like I said, even if I wasn't a dancer, I would have came here today anyways. So I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, Jennifer. That was awesome. Lots of energy this early in the morning. How many of you have been to the U of S graduation powwow? Okay, about a quarter. So this year's powwow is on May 31st, so here's a good opportunity for you to come and see Jennifer and others, other students, and also to honor our graduates from the university. Incidentally, University of Saskatchewan is groundbreaking in many ways, but one of the ways is with the powwow. In 2011, we were the first university in North America to bring in the rainbow flag as a flag in the grand entry of the powwow. So that's something that's really important. And we've, you know, in the TRC calls to action, there was no consultation with Two-Spirit people. And so something that we've been really working towards is acknowledging the whole continuum of genders that are part of our Indigenous communities and recognizing that we do have a place in the circle. And so our powwow here is one way that we recognize and validate all members of our community, and I'm very proud to say that. We also have queer-friendly sweat lodges and pipe ceremonies as well. So next I'd like to call upon Peter Stoicheff, President and Vice Chancellor of the University of Saskatchewan, to provide us with a few welcoming remarks. President Stoicheff is hosting this forum because of the emphasis that he has placed on reconciliation and being the best place we can be for Indigenous students, faculty, staff, and our communities. This is an emphasis he has made since the outset of his presidency, and his current work in this area is creating the systems and the motivation to ensure that this remains a priority for the university in the years, decades, and generations to come. Welcome, President Stoicheff.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much. Thanks, Jennifer, for that dance. It was really wonderful. To the live stream audience, thanks for joining us. I know that over 300 people have registered for this today. It's a marvelous turnout, and I think it says a lot about commitment. We're here for a day of sharing and listening and learning and commitment. And I don't know how many other people are watching live stream. It would add to that number, but thank you very much, everyone, for being here. Thank you to Patty. Thank you to Alex. Thanks, Louise, for your wisdom and your poetry and your prayers. Elder Larry Oakes, thank you very much. There was a pipe ceremony this morning, 7:30. As you heard, he had to, I don't know what time he got up, but he had to leave at 4:30 in the morning from Regina to drive through inclement weather to be here just to lead us through that ceremony, so thank you very much. What we learned at that ceremony and had clarified for us what we were reminded of was that the work that we're doing today and the work that we do at this university is extraordinarily important. I enjoyed hearing that, and it helped me to focus my thoughts for today. I know that members of the Board of Governors are here. Our Chair of the Board of Governors, Leah Hennique, is here. Thank you very much, Lee, for being here. Eugene, thank you very much. There are many people I want to thank. Blaine Fable, who is here somehow or other modestly at the back. Unusual for Blaine, but thank you very much, Blaine. The National Forum that Patty was mentioning a few minutes ago that we held here in November of 2015. I know many of the people in this room today were able to attend that or watch it live streamed. That National Forum occurred here because of Blaine. There's no other way of putting it. I was glad to be a co-chair of it shortly after I became president, but we had that National Forum here because Blaine pushed for it and wouldn't let the idea drop. And by the way, it was picked up by the University of Alberta. They had one last fall. It's going to be at the University of Manitoba next fall. And Universities Canada, that enormous organization that collects and oversees all 97 universities in this country, has, because of the work that Blaine has done along with Patty, made it one of their missions to continue on with those national forums year after year so that they're sustained, and so that there is a many decades-long commitment to the kind of work that was done at that forum here first, but will be done across the country at similar forums for, as I say, many years. And this forum is an internal follow-up to that one. We had been predicting this at that National Forum on Building Reconciliation a year and a few months ago now. We didn't know exactly when we would be able to hold this. We wanted it to happen sooner, but for a variety of reasons, we also wanted to make sure that we did it right. And I like to think because of the number of people who have been able to attend today and live stream to watch it that we've been able to organize an excellent event that will be a turning point for the university and very meaningful for the university. So I thank you again for attending. The university has been working for many years on being a better place for Aboriginal people, and it would take me too long to go through all of the examples, but all of you would know we have an Indigenous Studies department in the College of Arts and Science. We have the Native Law Center that started several decades ago. We have all of the TEP programs in the College of Education. We've got the Gordon Oaks Red Bear Student Center that opened just a year ago last month. And there are many, many other things that I could say about work that has been done by many different colleges, many different faculty members, different student organizations, different administrators over many years. But it hasn't been enough. Nobody would try to argue that it has been. It hasn't been enough. But they were genuine and remain genuine attempts to make this the best place it can be for Aboriginal students and their communities. And really, the only difference that I think we are looking at now, but it is a transformative one, is that we're collecting the whole university's imagination around these things so that the whole university is working to make it a better place, the best place it can be for Aboriginal students and their communities. It's been one of our signature areas of research. All of this is laudable, but what we're really talking about today is ensuring that this is a university-level set of initiatives, not a number of well-intentioned, powerful, but often disconnected initiatives, but to make this a university-level priority. And I believe that everybody here in this room is here because they want to see that happen. There have been many advances that have occurred here recently, and I think some of them might have been catalyzed by the National Forum on Building Reconciliation, where we learned a lot. We learned a lot from Aboriginal leaders from across the country. Justice Murray Sinclair, now Senator, was here, famous for, and I'll never forget it, saying that education is the key to reconciliation at that event. A profound statement that I think enabled a lot of people to focus on the importance of what we do at this institution. And many other Aboriginal leaders were here. There were university presidents here. There were student leaders from across the country. And we learned a lot there. We shared a lot. And some of the things that you'll be hearing about that we'll be doing at the university and that we have been doing for a little while now since that forum are things that we learned at that forum. So I know that these events are useful. They're useful for sharing, they're useful for listening, they're certainly useful for learning, and they're useful for committing ourselves. And I hope that at the end of the day we all feel somehow or other, maybe in different ways, but in some other way collectively, that we share a commitment to move ahead, and we're pretty clear on what that commitment is made up of. But there have been many advancements here over the last little while. 14% of our undergraduate students now are Aboriginal. 8% of our graduate students are Aboriginal. Our faculty recruitment has gone up between 50 and 100% over the last couple of years. The numbers are low, but the rate, the increase has been very high, and that's a very good sign. No doubt we'll be talking more about that today. The retention of first-year students has increased markedly across many colleges here. So we've seen a lot, but there's a lot more that we can identify today. There's a lot more that you will see shared out in the public space just outside of this room that has been going on. As I put it at that National Forum on Building Reconciliation, given the fact that then we were awaiting the final report of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission with its 94 calls to action, many of which are unique to the university sector. So we were awaiting that, but the draft had come out the June before, about a half a year before. And because of the province that we're in and the people that we are committed to serving, as I put it at the time, and I still think it's useful to think in these ways, if it's not us, who's it going to be? And if it's not now, when's it going to happen? The Aboriginal population in Canada has grown 20% Since 2006, the non-Aboriginal population has grown 5%. Think about those numbers. 46% of Aboriginal people are under the age of 25. Non-Aboriginal, that percentage is 29. The education gap, there's much to say about it. We signed an MOU with all 24 post-secondary institutions in this province on the occasion of that national forum with the intention of closing that gap, working together to close that gap as much as it could possibly be closed. But 60% of Aboriginal Canadians are not given the opportunity to acquire the literacy skills for today's economy, and that's 10% higher than it is for the non-Aboriginal population in this country. So in closing, I'm really hoping, and I know that all of you are, that as a result of today's forum, and a result of many of the other things that are happening around today's forum that have happened before it and will continue on after it, that we can make this a university-level priority, that we can talk about concrete resources that have to be directed toward it, that we can talk about the time and commitment that it's going to take to change to the core, and that time is going to be measured not in terms of weeks or months or even single-digit years, but generations. But we're doing it now. You've got to start somewhere, and we're doing it now. It's going to be something that will need everybody so that Aboriginal students can continue to and increasingly see themselves here and see this university as their home. And it'll take us listening to each other and to our Aboriginal colleagues and learning from each other. So thank you very much for the opportunity to say these things and set this context, and I do look forward to a tremendous day.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter, for those words, for setting the stage. Thank you also to Peter for hosting today. I concur with Louise, what Louise said. My faith is in Peter to lead us. I know that Peter will be back on stage later this morning for the panel on university governance and administration. Now, next on our program was to be opening remarks from Mark Dockstader, President of First Nations University of Canada. Unfortunately, Saskatchewan. Unfortunately, weather made it impossible for President Dockstader to make it here this morning and be able to return back to Regina in time for his First Nations University commitment. So he had to cancel. He sends his sincere regrets to us about not being present and wishes us really the best for our important work today. So we're now ready for our first session of the forum. It's a panel entitled Reconciliation Through Teaching and Learning. This panel session will be co-moderated by Kristina Bidwell, Associate Dean of Aboriginal Affairs in the College of Arts and Science, and our colleague Jaris Swidrovich, lecturer in the College of Pharmacy and Nutrition. Joining them on stage for a discussion will be Phil Woods, who is replacing Beth Horsberg this morning. Beth also stranded at home. Phil, Associate Dean from the College of Nursing. Fran, Wally, Associate Dean, Academic from the College of Agriculture Bioresources. Martin Phillipson, Dean, College of Law. Sorry, Martin. I had just put Martin in the College of Arts and Science. Dean, College of Law. And Michelle Pretula, Dean of the College of Education. So I'm going to ask them to make their way to the front, to the stage, and then I'd like to hand it over to Kristina and Jaris to take over our first session. Thank you.
Good morning, staff, faculty, students, elders, and honored guests. It is a pleasure to be gathered here today with all of you on this Treaty 6 territory in the traditional homeland of the Métis. My name is Jaris Swidrovich. I am a Saulteaux First Nations man from Yellow Quill First Nation and a pharmacist and lecturer here at the University of Saskatchewan in the College of Pharmacy and Nutrition. It has been a pleasure to honor and assist in the planning and delivery of the 75-minute session on reconciliation through teaching and learning. This session will showcase 6 colleges within the University of Saskatchewan to share where they are at in terms of building reconciliation and responding to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada calls to action. Each panelist will share their progress for 7 minutes, and then, after all panelists have spoken, the floor will be open for questions. Please welcome Dr. Kristina Bidwell, Associate Dean, Aboriginal Affairs with the College of Arts and Science, who will share additional opening remarks and introduce our panelists.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's wonderful to see so many people here. I started working at the University of Saskatchewan 16 years ago, and at that time there was a very committed and passionate group of people working on Indigenous issues, but we would not have seen a large gathering like this. It's wonderful to see such a large and diverse group of people coming together to work together towards reconciliation. So it's very exciting. In terms of teaching and learning, our university council has made an important commitment. They have emphatically endorsed the inclusion of Indigenous knowledges and experiences for the purpose of achieving meaningful and relevant learning outcomes in all degree programs at the University of Saskatchewan. That is a big commitment. But our colleges and our degree programs are extremely diverse in size, in their areas of study, in their accreditation, all kinds of things. And so what meaningful and relevant learning outcomes is going to mean is going to be very different from one part of the university to the next. And so we thought it would be a good idea to bring together a group of leaders from across the colleges to speak about what their college are doing. And I'm very excited to hear from my colleagues about the things that they're working on, and I think that sharing ideas is one of the best ways to move forward. So the panel has already been introduced, so maybe we'll just jump in and go through and each person, as we said, will speak for 7 minutes, leaving a lot of time, we hope, for discussion afterwards. So maybe then I will start by introducing Phil Woods, Associate Dean in the College of Nursing.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I found out I was doing this presentation at 6:45 this morning, so you'll have to bear with me a little bit when I was checking my email. Our Dean, Interim Dean, Dr. Beth Holzberg, is on her way in, so she may join us sometime during the morning. She lives a little bit further out of the city than I do, but I managed to get in. So you'll have to bear with me as I move through the slides. But I suppose first of all I should also acknowledge Dr. Heather Exner-Pro, who's been quite instrumental in some of the work we've done within the college, and also I noticed that Dr. Lois Berry sat at the back of the room, but was quite instrumental in some of the work when she was an Associate Dean within the college as well. So, and many other people, but they were quite instrumental in what we do. So I've got 11 slides, 7 minutes. I'll see what I can do. So lots of information, so I'll have to look back here. So the College of Nursing is leading the country in BSN Indigenous student numbers, nearly 19%. That's the highest known proportion of Indigenous students in any school of nursing in the country. So we're doing really well there. It's been growing over the years. It was quite high when I came to the university in 2005. Over 400 Indigenous alumni in the last decade, and we have a retention rate within our program of 93%, although some move through the program in a slower way out of cohort, but we do have a 93% retention rate. Next thing I want to highlight is Onion Lake students that we were approached in 2014 by the Onion Lake community requesting 15 seats in the Saskatoon campus. So our leaders went out, had some discussions with the leaders there, and the data I've got here is that in the fall 2016, 11 students were admitted to the Saskatoon campus. Currently, there's 9 students remain in the cohort, with the 2 other students remain in the program and will continue at a slower pace. So that's a 100% retention rate at the moment in my calculations. Indigenous BSN summer student projects promoted through funding from the University of Saskatchewan Undergraduate Student Research Assistantships and the Ministry of Economy. And I'll just mention the projects that have gone on, some examples. The Yorkton Tribal Council, promoting community working relationships for chronic disease management. Treaty 4 Education Alliance and Families for Capel area. Development of e-book to promote early childhood literacy and infant and child development. Aboriginal Inner City Circle Project Organisation, Hearts in the Park, Prevention of Family Violence. So there's just an example of a few of the projects that have gone on. As you know, we're a professional college has clinical placement. So we have, in the 2016-17 year, 6 clinical sites with First Nations groups. And I'll just mention what these are. There was Agency Chief Regina, All Nations Healing Regina, Five Hills Capel in Regina, Lac La Orange, Prince Albert Tribal Council, Yorkton Tribal Council. So based on our data that we have a system called HSPNet. 29 BSN students contributed to 6,524 hours of clinical practice time in those communities during that year. So a tremendous amount of hours. And new to this year, Indigenous student nurse placements in the North, Churchill and Cross River area to link the academic health science initiatives and scholarship. So a lot of work going on there in the clinical. Learn Where You Live. Indigenous grads return to work in Indigenous communities. From our new programme, we don't really have that much data because we haven't done the first survey of the 2 and 5 year follow-ups. But we do know the majority of our success in Indigenous student recruitment and retention is directly tied to our distributed programmes in the PA in the North. From the old BSN programme, which was a NEPS, if people remember that, many of our grads work as clinical instructors for us now. This currently includes 25 graduates who provide clinical teaching in Treaty 4 and 6 areas. I'm not going to spend it didn't work. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide, just to tell you that we have a number of students in our graduate studies programs. It's a small and growing program. I think we average out about 110, 120 students in our program at the moment. But where we've been tracking data since 2012-13, we've had 47 self-identified Aboriginal students in our programs, and that's a breakdown there. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that, but you'll see that we do have a number of students that have come through our programs. Some are in and some have graduated. In 2015, the College of Nursing established an entrance scholarship of $5,000 for Indigenous graduate students. 5 were awarded in 2016, 2 to our nurse practitioner programme, 2 to our PhD, 1 to a Master of Nursing thesis. We will continue to offer 5 scholarships every year for the next 5 years. We also have 2 seats in our Masters of Nursing nurse practitioner programme reserved for Indigenous students as well. Now this next slide was... maybe I've gone through too far. Or maybe the slides have gone out of sequence here. I did have another slide here, which seems to have disappeared somewhere. And I don't know whether it's gone out of order or not. No. Oh yeah, here it is. This was news to me that in our nurse practitioner programme, we have 26 student placements in Indigenous communities from 2013 to 17. 22 of these were in Saskatchewan. I'm not going to run through all the different First Nations communities. And 4 of those were in Yorkton, BC and Alberta, because we have students coming to our programme from other provinces. So this was news to me when I saw this morning. So quite a tremendous amount of clinical placements, and I know they grow every year. The College of Nursing Student and Faculty Survey. The trend that came out of this was all students expressed a desire for more Indigenous experiences and speakers. We haven't really done our new BSN rollout. It's at the end of our first offering of the programme, but we'll ask some more questions around that. But all students are very much interested in more experiences and speakers. I don't know how I'm doing for time here. I probably am about out. So further initiatives in our 4th planning cycle. We're going to do ongoing examination of Indigenous programme and outreach and engagement. Targeted fundraising to support Indigenous graduate students to study full-time over and above the $5,000 scholarships that we offer. ongoing effort to recruit and retain Indigenous faculty, clinical instructors and staff. And they gave me some data here. We have 3 faculty out of 50, 6% that are Aboriginal or Indigenous. We have staff is approximately the same, and clinical instructors we have approximately 10%. And I will leave it there because I just flipped through to the next slide. But maybe I'll say, academic faculty practice clinics. I'll talk about. Beth would be able to talk more about that. The Warman Clinic, which is starting to promote and work through the systems here in the university, and consider moving to a more dynamic learn where you live approach, which is really using mathematical modelling to predict need. Thank you very much. I hope I made sense. I say this was new information to me this morning at 6:45, so hopefully it's made some sense to you anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. I'll call up Fran Wally, Associate Dean Academic in the College of Agriculture and Bioresources.
Great, thank you very much. It's really wonderful to be here. It was a lot easier. I just had to make it from Lake Ridge. The weather wasn't so bad in town, but I made it successfully. So I wanted to talk just briefly about what we're teaching and what we're learning, seeing as how we're part of the teaching and learning panel this morning. And I'm going to start by just telling you a little bit about one of our specific programs that we have in the college, the Kanawha-Taytan ASCII program, comprised of a certificate and 2 diplomas. And the program itself had its beginnings back in 2006 when it was launched as the Indigenous Peoples Resource Management Certificate. And it was in response to a federal government regulation that First Nations who are entering the Regional Land Environment and Management Program, or RLEMP, had a certified land manager on staff. And so we were part of stage 1 of that certification process. Those requirements have loosened over the years, but we've retained that certification process nonetheless and continue to offer that program. And it really focuses on environmental, legal, and economic aspects of land and resource management in Aboriginal communities. And since 2006, there's been over 220 graduates, and these are students that come to the U of S from across Canada. In our last integrated plan, so IP3, the College of Ag Bio made a commitment to consult extensively with Indigenous communities to ascertain their interests and needs for undergraduate level programs in ag bio discipline areas. And we committed to developing effective partnerships and design and initiate appropriate programs. At that time, one of our focuses was on the IPRM program, and we wanted to make sure that we were offering a program that remained relevant. In order to do that sort of revisioning of the program, an Aboriginal engagement strategy was implemented in 2012, and that was carried out by then Associate Dean Murray Drew, Candace Peet, and Cheryl Mills participated in that. And together they went out and consulted with 23 different First Nations and Métis organizations within Saskatchewan and beyond. And through those consultations, they identified the need to enhance Indigenous knowledge content in particular and create additional training opportunities in the College of Ag Bio. As a consequence of that, we established the Aboriginal Programs Advisory Group, which includes members from a number of different First Nations, folks that have participated in the original consultation, as well as an elder, Elder Leona Tatusis, who has been an important and really valued supporter, providing support for the IPRM program since its inception. So from that, The Kanawhataytan ASCII program emerged to replace the IPRM program. And the KA certificate, Kanawhataytan ASCII, is Cree, translated into English as "let us take care of the land." And it's an important statement and call to action because it's a call to action for us, First Nations and the University of Saskatchewan, to develop a program to take care of our land. So the new certificate, so the revisioned IPRM, is now 21 credit units of university-delivered courses, including the co-delivery of Indigenous Studies 107 and field studies in the environment. And this is delivered with the cooperation of the Department of Indigenous Studies and Professor Winona Wheeler in particular, and Melissa Arcan from the College of Ag Bio. And much of the program is actually delivered out in the community of Mistawassis. And so lots of interesting sort of different kinds of modes of delivery for that program. Our diplomas then build on the certificate, so the certificate is embedded within the diplomas. We have two, one in Aboriginal land governance and a second in Aboriginal resource management. These can be delivered on campus, but students also have the option of doing that as a fully distance delivery program. And it's a 60 credit unit program, and the important attribute of those diplomas is students completing the diplomas can then ladder into a Bachelor of Science in Renewable Resource Management. We have a couple of majors that students can then ladder into that program should they want to. And one of the goals there was to provide multiple on-ramps for Aboriginal students rather than committing to a 4-year program necessarily from the start, being able to work through a certificate, a diploma, and then into the bachelor's program. In addition, we also wanted to respond to some of the guidance that we had received in terms of the kinds of training that would be useful for First Nations and Aboriginal communities in general. And so we developed a number and continue to develop 1 credit unit courses. They're a first for the College of Ag Bio, and these are distance delivery courses, and they range in topics from duty to consult, land management frameworks to how to sample soils. So some very practical hands-on experiences as well. And these can be delivered as part of the university level training, but also can be delivered for non-credit as well. We want to make sure that we're connecting with our graduates. So this past year, April Roberts-Poitras, who's our Aboriginal Programs and Outreach Coordinator, has started connecting with our alumni through an online email. And if you connect with April, she'd be happy to get you on that email list. And we're also committed to remain connected with Aboriginal communities, building on some of our outreach initiatives that have fairly healthy history, working out of English River and the Office of Aboriginal Initiatives, delivering various workshops on relevant issues of the day. In order to connect with communities, one thing that our college has been feeling a need is to understand what our individual researchers and faculty within the college are actually keeping themselves busy with in terms of their research efforts. And being teacher scholars, of course, we want to be able to connect our teaching with the research. And so we're currently planning an inventory of our current research projects and programs with Aboriginal content and focus so we can get a better understanding of what we're actually doing within the college itself. So I also wanted to talk about, aside from what we're teaching, what we're actually learning in the college. And we heard about the University Council's endorsement of inclusion of Indigenous knowledges and experiences. And when we discussed this at the college level, we really wanted to get a better understanding of what direction our college should be taking in order to meet that expectation of achieving meaningful and relevant learning outcomes. And so we have been very lucky to be working with Stryker Calvez, who has helped us with the Indigenous Voices program for Ag Bio faculty and staff. To date, we've had 2 really great retreats where we had Elder Maria Campbell present, as well as Professor Winona Wheeler, who gave up their time to come and talk to us about some of the issues. And we all have also had a series of workshops within the college to address some of the interests of faculty and staff for some training. And what came out of those workshops is there's a real desire for more information. And so with the Indigenous Voices workshops, we're currently planning a workshop to talk about treaty. And there was great interest. We often talk about Treaty 6, and many of us don't really know what's in Treaty 6. And so Stryker is going to help us gain a better understanding of what that is and what it means to us as well as we move forward. There was also a suggestion from one of the faculty members that we should be developing a toolkit for faculty for introducing Indigenous structure and concepts into our classrooms. I have no idea what that looks like at this point, but it's something that we're very interested in pursuing. Oh, I'm sorry about that. Yeah, so I got down to the toolkit on the bottom here. In terms of indigenizing our curriculum, it remains in progress. And one thing that we're doing right now is referring back to that call from University Council, we know that we're teaching some courses that have really significant content that we feel would help us achieve that meaningful and relevant learning outcome, but it's scattered throughout our curriculum. So we're currently inventorying our courses to try and find out what is the content, how much content is there, is it historical, governance and policy, traditional knowledge, experiential learning. So we're trying to get a handle on what we're already doing. And one of the things that we're exploring right now is whether we can include a requirement for a certain number of hours or credit units in every program based on courses that we currently have and courses that we envision seeing developed, or changing some of the material within existing courses to include some of that meaningful and relevant learning outcomes. And finally, the faculty and staff from our college are very interested in an analysis of current indigenization initiatives across campus, and that's why we're here today. We're very interested in learning what others are doing and could it fit within what we would like to achieve and what we would like to do in our college as well.
Thank you, Fran. I'd like to call on Martin Phillipson, the Dean of the College of Law.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I don't do PowerPoint. I'm a neo-Luddite, so you're going to have the misfortune of having to look at me for 7 minutes. So I'll try to make it 4 or 5. I'm very proud to be the Dean of a college that has a 44-year history of Indigenous legal education. The Native Law Centre was founded by Professor Roger Carter, our Dean, in 1973, and over 1,000 students have taken our program of legal studies for Native people, and almost 80 to 90% of all the practicing Indigenous lawyers in Canada have been through the doors of the Native Law Centre at some time in our history. So I'm very proud of that history, and I'm proud of the work of people like Roger Carter and Sarkesh Henderson and Ruth Thompson, who've contributed to the education of over 1,000 lawyers, Indigenous lawyers in Canada. So we take our obligation very seriously because we have a history of a commitment to Indigenous legal education. So when the Truth and Reconciliation Commission came out with its recommendations, one of the first things we did was to, our curriculum committee recommended and Faculty Council voted to bring in a mandatory course in line with recommendation number 28. Unfortunately, we had to push that back. It was supposed to start this September. We had to push it back to next September. And that brings up my first point. I want to talk a bit about what we're doing, but I want to try and provoke us into some conversations. And the first thing I realized as Dean is that capacity is key. We don't have the capacity to deliver a proper reconciliation curriculum. So what do I mean by capacity? I mean Indigenous faculty. We need to hire Indigenous faculty, we need to have Indigenous voices, we need to have Indigenous faces around our faculty council tables so we do it properly and are guided by our Indigenous colleagues. So I'm engaging in some significant hiring. Hopefully the provincial budget will not put a complete halt to that. It may slow down a little bit, but capacity is key. So the Native Law Centre staff and the people who did wonderful work over the years were not faculty members. They were members of ASPA and other unions. So I'm changing the major staff in the Native Law Centre into faculty members and us for members, and they will sit around our faculty council table. They will have voice and vote at the faculty council table, and they will guide us on how to develop a true reconciliation curriculum. In addition to the mandatory course, we're going to develop with Stryker Calvez and Maria Campbell a course on Indigenous protocol, how to engage with Indigenous peoples when you do research, how to engage with local communities. I think one of the things we have to be conscious of is that it's okay to make mistakes when we're dealing with our Indigenous colleagues, but we have to learn about protocol. We have to make sure we approach them in the right way. So we'll be developing a course with Stryker and Maria on Indigenous protocol. We have a cultural advisor. One of the first things I did when I became Dean was sign Maria Campbell up to a 5-year contract. She'd already been working with us previously to be in the college 2 days a week and to make sure that nobody else tried to steal her. So I signed it down with a no trade clause and a 5-year contract to make sure that Maria will be with us for 5 years and provide us with advice and guidance. And I'm learning so much from Maria every time I sit down for a cup of tea with her, but she is a very important aspect of our community. Other things we're going to do in the college, and we're already doing it, is partnering with other organizations across the country. Some of you may be aware that in September 2017 we will be running a law school in Iqaluit in Nunavut, where we've signed a contract for up to 25 Inuk students. Thank you. Up to 25 Inuk students hopefully will graduate with U of S JD degrees in 2021. We're enormously proud of that undertaking. I think Beth Bilson deserves a lot of credit for actually putting in that application and then handing it over to me. But one of the things that we thought about in the college when we put in that application was that, again, to echo President Stoicheff's statement, if not us, then who? If we do have a 43-year, 44-year commitment to Indigenous legal education, we should be offering this program. But that's also part of capacity building. That's making sure that there are more Indigenous lawyers in this country and there are more Inuk lawyers in Nunavut to develop a Nunavut bar that is representative of the population that it serves. So that's another capacity piece. So hiring faculty, having voices around the table, making sure there are more Indigenous lawyers to represent their own communities and to provide a voice for their communities, which is sadly lacking within the legal system. Other things we're doing in May, I'm partnering with colleagues at the University of Ottawa, and we're hosting a workshop on access and benefit sharing of Indigenous traditional knowledge, which will be held at the Native Law Centre. And Maria is helping me, and so is the Saskatoon Tribal Council, to bring in elders and knowledge keepers from across the province and across Western Canada to discuss how we can develop policies that more accurately and more appropriately protect Indigenous traditional knowledge and also provide policymakers with guidance on the best way to share that Indigenous traditional knowledge in a fair and equitable fashion. So I'll be working on that. Which brings me to the research question. I know this is about teaching and learning, but I think there's some significant research things that we can be doing. One of the less sort of talked about recommendations of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission is Call to Action 50. Call to Action 50 calls for the creation of Indigenous law institutes across Canada, which will work to develop research and scholarship on Indigenous traditional law. I've already been talking to some other law schools, including the University of Victoria, to think about what does it mean to be an Indigenous law institute. And we can't just call ourselves an Indigenous law institute, but what I would like to see would be the Native Law Centre think about itself as an Indigenous law institute and see what we can do and have conversations with the law schools to build a network of Indigenous law institutes across the country. And I'd like the University of Saskatchewan to be the host of one of those. And that brings me to one of the major sort of issues that I taught first year property law for almost 20 years. It's one of our fundamental compulsory subjects. And we had 1/3 of our content was on Aboriginal property law. However, there's a paradigmatic shift that has to happen in legal education, and I presume it's the same in the other disciplines that are represented here. That I was quite competent at teaching Aboriginal law as it applied to Aboriginal peoples, how the English common law, how the statutes of the province and the Federal Parliament of Canada applied and impacted Aboriginal peoples. I cannot teach Indigenous traditional law. I'm not qualified, and that's why we need those Indigenous faces around the table, and that's why we need Indigenous law institutes to help transform our legal education system and our education system to be more reflective of other types of knowledge. So again, that's a part of the capacity piece, but it's part of the research piece, and it's something that we should be involved in. So, before you have to keep looking at me for too long, there's a couple of things I want to raise. My goal as Dean of the College of Law is to have a student body and a faculty complement that reflects our location and our country and our place. So we have to get numbers up. It's not just a numbers game, but we have to have a representative student body and a representative faculty body. Secondly, we have to create a curriculum and a learning environment that nurtures reconciliation. And we have to create an intellectual space for our Indigenous faculty and researchers to challenge the orthodoxies that our legal system are built on. It's their place to be challenging those orthodoxies. Those orthodoxies and those fundamental principles have brought us to some of the terrible positions that we're in right now. And we need to fix that, and we need to provide the intellectual space for our Indigenous colleagues to do that. And that will present a challenge to many, many things that seem mundane, like our tenure and promotion standards, and how we value scholarship and how we evaluate scholarship. All those things are very important. We have to think about that. And I think I want to echo one of the tweets that appeared up there, and this is one of my main points, is that this is a long-term project. Reconciliation is a long-term project. Efforts have to have strong roots and foundations, and that takes time and resources. This is not going to be fixed in 2 years or 5 years. As the President said, this is a generational challenge. So we have to make sure that we do this properly and we take our time. So capacity is key, and doing stuff is key, but so is patience. But I don't want patience to be synonymous with doing nothing. We have to take a long-term view and make sure that stuff gets done. A couple of things that I'd be interested in to hear your thoughts on, and I'll finish up, I promise. As I said at the start, Recommendation 28 asked for sort of a compulsory course. There's a huge debate going on amongst the Canadian Council of Law Deans and in institutions across the country about whether mandatory courses on this subject matter are a good idea. I'm not sure that they are. Certainly some of my Indigenous colleagues say that they're not. The other alternative is mainstreaming, making sure that there is Indigenous content in every single course that we teach. So students aren't forced to study this material, but more importantly, it's weaved into the fabric of your degree and the fabric of the education that you provide your students. The reason I worry about that, and the reason that the law schools are debating this, is we have to be cognizant that there's a clear opportunity for backlash if we do this wrong from some of our non-Indigenous students. I know we don't want to talk about that, but I think it's very important that we do talk about that. I have a colleague at Lakehead University, and they're one of the leading schools, one of the newest law schools in Canada, one of the leading schools in delivering traditional Indigenous knowledge in their courses, and they are encountering some significant issues in some of the classes. And I don't think they're reconsidering whether these courses should be mandatory, but I think we have to think about that. There are some significant challenges about how we introduce this material and how we make sure that our students are exposed, but also that our students understand this material, more importantly, absorb it and take it on. If you create mandatory courses and force people to take courses, there is a resentment there about the content and whether they actually feel that they didn't want to learn this material. So I think the way in which we approach this, we have to think about how do we create long-term foundations for this material, make sure that it's an essential part of any education in whatever college we're at. And that means, again, we might take time. We have to have some difficult conversations. So the mandatory versus mainstreaming debate is a huge debate in my college, but I want to be guided by the Indigenous faculty that I'm going to hire to help us design a proper reconciliation curriculum. So, lots going on in the College of Law. This is a big challenge. It's a very important challenge. Again, I want to carry on the legacy of those people who have gone before me and our 44 years of success. But that paradigmatic shift is the thing that really I think about the most, is that we're moving from law as it applies to Indigenous people to actually Indigenous law being part of our curriculum in every law student. And the best argument I have for why this is important from a professional school's point of view is that the legal professionals of the 21st century are going to have to have a deep understanding of Indigenous traditional law and Indigenous knowledge as an essential part of the legal system. So in the short time that I will be Dean, 5, 10 years, who knows, we'll get started on that. But we're starting now, but again, I can't overemphasize the importance of capacity and patience and understanding. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. So now I'd like to introduce Michelle Pretula, the Dean of the College of Education.
Tanse, everyone, good morning. What a pleasure it is for me to be here today to share with you just a few of the initiatives that the College of Education faculty and staff have been up to in the past year and a little bit longer, probably the past couple of years. Before I talk about that, I do want to acknowledge the faculty and staff in the college. It is because of their commitment to indigenization and reconciliation that we are able to share with you what we have to share today. In terms of developing a university program that embraces Indigenous content, knowledge, experiences, and worldview, it's hard work. It forces us to think differently and to work differently and to suspend our assumptions and approach each other in a very open, honest, and humble way. And I've had the privilege of experiencing that with the faculty and staff that we have. I do want to preface by saying that these are just some of the initiatives, and so I hope I don't offend anyone by not delving into a lot of detail. One of the things that we accomplished over the past year is to develop that mandatory class for all of our teacher candidates at the undergraduate level that immerses our students in teaching and learning and instructional strategies so that we are properly responding to the call to action, number 62, where we are providing a mandatory requirement for all of our students to immerse themselves in the foundations of First Nation, Métis, and Inuit teaching, as well as in the learning about teaching for reconciliation. And we did this through a course in Ed Foundations, cross-listed with a course in Curriculum Studies. I want to acknowledge Dr. Batiste for this work, Dr. McKay, Dr. Wilson, Dr. Wally, among others. This was done very, very quickly and beautifully, and it starts in September. Secondly, we have required treaty education that we have done in partnership with the Office of the Treaty Commissioner, the Programs Office, and our partners. Elder Eugene Arcand was instrumental in helping us do this. Last year, we offered an option for our students to engage in treaty education, but now it has become a mandatory part of our 322 student teaching, where our students will be immersed in the teachings of treaty so that they can go out and deliver what we need to do in order to fulfill our promise for the next generation of learners. This happens in year 3. At the same time in that course, we're changing, and this was quite a challenge for the college, we're changing how we approach field experience opportunities, the internship and the student teaching. Rather than our students being immersed in one environment that they are necessarily comfortable in, all of our students will be immersed in 3 separate, distinct environments, one urban, one rural, and one First Nation during their student teaching. We believe those are the best ways that we can help our students understand not only about First Nation, Métis, and Inuit teaching and learning, but how to engage in it and how to do it. And I want to acknowledge the Programs Office, Irene Oakes, Dr. Wallin, in getting this important work done. I can't be up here and talk about the college if I don't mention our work on the Indigenous Languages Certificate. This was quite an accomplishment. We were pushed by one of our important elders through Battleford Agency Tribal Council, who has now passed away, who engaged us in thinking about how critical it was to offer an opportunity for our students to engage in Indigenous language study. This responds to the call to action number 16, where we're offering more and more opportunities for First Nation, Métis, non-First Nation learners to immerse themselves in such languages. We have our first cohort of the Cree Indigenous Language Certificate who will be convocating this fall, and believe me, you'll be hearing more about that. We're also currently working on our Michif Language Certificate, and I do want to acknowledge Elder Norm Fleury for that wonderful work, as well as our faculty member Kevin Lewis, Jay Wilson, wonderful work going on with those certificates. We are also pushing some of the Métis Michif work forward through our partnerships with Westmont School as well as St. Mark's School. Engaging with our community and doing things in a good way is critically important for us. We have Norm Fleury working with us. He's been with us for a couple of years, forcing us to think about the work that we're doing in very intentional, meaningful, and deep ways. Norm has helped us identify some of the assumptions that we sometimes errantly make in our programming, and I want to acknowledge his presence and his commitment to our college and the university. We have ITEP, and although ITEP's been around for 45 years, ITEP has advanced several innovations this year that I want to talk to you about. Alongside of ITEP, we also have our partnership with the Gabriel Dumont Institute and the SUNTEP program, and NORTEP, and our partnership with Aurora College. All of these partnerships seem to be threatened on an annual basis, where the funding for northern or remote programming is for one reason or another, it seems to be one of the first things that is ready to be cut. This forces us to think differently and do our work differently on campus, to find different ways to restructure our off-campus and on-reserve offerings so that we don't fail on that commitment. I want to acknowledge the University of Saskatchewan for assuming the funding, a significant portion of the funding for the ITEP program, and allowing us to continue to do that work. I need to acknowledge Chris Scribe, Yvette Arcand, and the ITEP crew, as well as Sheila Pocha from SUNTEP for this wonderful work. Just last week, ITEP and St. Francis Catholic School, as well as the Saskatoon Tribal Council Education, signed a memorandum of understanding in the creation of a professional development school. It is the first of its kind, and it's taking place at the St. Francis Cree Bilingual School that now has kindergarten to grade 8. I know because I was the principal who was given the opportunity to develop that 8 years ago, where our student teachers go into the school in year 1, year 2, year 3, and enrich their opportunities around instructional strategies in language, and we reciprocate our teaching and learning with the teachers and staff at that school. ITEP has also adopted the approach of having mentor teachers working with our students. This is another form of support and advisement for our ITEP students in order to ensure high retention, high learning, comfort, satisfaction with the program. And we have some wonderful graduate programming as well that continues to take place in the college, as well as new programming over this past year. I want to acknowledge Dr. Kovach's work, Dr. Wilson, Dr. Baker, Norm Fleury, and many non-Aboriginal faculty as well for advancing the land-based master's cohort. We've got one graduate, one graduating, and we're looking at pushing that into a PhD program, which is going to be wonderful work, but very, very hard work in order to advance it. We continue to have an Aboriginal education cohort through the Department of Educational Foundations, which is ongoing and very strong, and a newly developed master's program in First Nations educational organizational leadership. And again, these respond to the call to action number 63, where we're building on student capacity both at the undergraduate and graduate levels in order to identify and meet the needs of all teaching and learning across the province and on reserve. I'm very proud of the work in the college, but again, I will emphasize that it is hard work. It's deliberate work in order to advance programming and reconciliation. This must be done in community with others. It can never be something that is done for or at. And so it's deliberate, intentional, and wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Michelle. I'd like now to call up my co-chair, Jaris Swidrovich. And Jaris is a lecturer in the College of Pharmacy and Nutrition, but he has really been doing a lot of leadership in his college, far beyond what we usually see with a lecturer. I know he's involved in many things, so welcome, Jaris.
All right, I'm going to do my best to basically give you all a brief lecture. I have about 100 lecture hours this year, so I think I'm getting good at it finally. And this is probably the last time I'll ever be around a table of deans, let me tell you that. So quite intimidating to be here, but I hope you do learn something about what we're working on in the College of Pharmacy and Nutrition. I also just want to ground myself and talk to you about what brings me here and why I moved to this institution from my previous practice sites. And it's because of the grandmother who I never got to meet. She was a residential school survivor, and my mother is a 60 Scoop survivor and also an alumni of this school and a sessional lecturer in Indigenous studies for the past 17 years. So I just wanted to add that family component and help me to calm down as well too. All right, so what I want to share with you is that why we are doing this in pharmacy and nutrition and why I and my colleagues are advocating for this in pharmacy schools across Canada is because pharmacists are undeniably the most accessible healthcare professionals. There is no other health professional you can call up and talk to within a minute or less, or just walk in and talk to that health professional. That's us as pharmacists. And also, sorry to my colleagues, but pharmacists are often the most trusted professional around there as well. So we need to basically take advantage of that. And looking at where arguably the greatest needs of healthcare are in our nation are Indigenous people. Indigenous people are so vastly overrepresented in almost every single area of health. If we don't place a strong, or at least stronger, focus on Indigenous teaching and learning in pharmacy schools in Canada particularly, this could even almost be perceived as systemic racism. Especially considering where these greatest needs are in Canada. If we fail to best prepare all Canadians, including health professionals like pharmacists, to not only address but also proactively prevent Indigenous health inequities, this would otherwise further perpetuate the substandard achievements of the health experiences of Indigenous Canadians. Just to give you a Saskatchewan example of why this is important here, right at the College of Pharmacy and Nutrition, the only school of pharmacy in this province. So Saskatchewan, we're very lucky to have the highest proportion of Indigenous people out of all other provinces in Canada, and this is an older statistic too, from 2011. While 16% of our province is Indigenous, self-identified anyway, 25% of all the children in our province are Indigenous, and this has been an ongoing statistic for the past decade. So 25% of all children registered in kindergarten, even this past year, are self-identified as Indigenous. So what does the College of Pharmacy and Nutrition look like when these kindergarteners reach this college level in pharmacy? Also, First Nations people generally comprise at least 40% or greater of healthcare access utilizations in Saskatchewan and certainly elsewhere across the country. This number reaches, of course, proportions of 100%, depending where you are in Saskatchewan and certainly the further north you go. Reflecting back on the teaching and learning and why we're here today, I want to basically add a colonized approach of teaching you about this and looking at the literature and how the literature has described strategies for us to integrate Indigenous content and ways of knowing into the classroom. The one that I'll focus mostly on and what we're doing at the College of Pharmacy and Nutrition is looking at learning outcomes, which is certainly one of the many areas we can indigenize the classroom. I'll also mention that, of course, content and learning resources are a huge part of this process, and I'm very thankful for our colleagues in the university library as well. Instructional strategies and methods, and I feel that this we often forget about. We tend to think about content and what other content can we put into almost every course in a program, and I can tell you right now, I can't think of any way that we can incorporate Indigenous content into medicinal chemistry in pharmacy. At least I'm sure there probably are ways, I just can't think of that myself. However, what we could do in medicinal chemistry is talk about it, learn about it in an Indigenous way. So it's not just content to bring into the classroom. Also, looking at assessment of learning, I know that I didn't grow up on reserve, but I know that my colleagues, friends, and family who did, they have never been given a multiple choice question a week after learning from an elder to list what that elder said to them or re-mention what that elder said to them. There's got to be some time for internalization and self-reflection on what you've learned from your people and the stories that you've heard, and allow that to come out in a different way. So how can we do that in a program like pharmacy? And also just a philosophical underpinning of the whole entire curriculum. So not just where can we fit this in right there, how can it be part of everything? How can it be a part of our natural process of thinking how to go forward? My colleagues know how much of an education nerd I am, and despite being a pharmacist, I love Bloom's taxonomy. So for those of you who are not aware of Bloom's taxonomy, this is a way of categorizing learning outcomes in education. And based on where you are at in this pyramid, it basically dictates to what level would you like your learner to understand and know what you are talking about. There's various resources out there that also give you strategies on how to assess each of those levels of learning outcomes as well. I'm not going to read these to you, but I just want to physically show you that we have this going on in pharmacy and nutrition. So what has been developed by our college is proposed learning outcomes, Indigenous content learning outcomes for each year of the program. So far it is in the draft stage still. There are year 1, year 2, year 3, and year 4 learning outcomes. There is also a grant proposal that has been submitted to work with our Indigenous, First Nations, Métis, and even Inuit communities, both within the city and elsewhere, to help us inform this process. I'm often asked to leave. Is that a fire alarm that I hear? No, I heard my own buzzing. Anyway, I'm often asked what will success look like? People say, Jaris, what does success look like in pharmacy and nutrition and incorporating these learning outcomes? And to me, it's not about me, it's not about the educator's perception, it's not even technically about our students' perception. It's ultimately about the patients who we serve. So in pharmacy, we're here for patients. There's no other reason a person goes into pharmacy. If there were no patients, there would be no pharmacists. So until I hear from patients that they feel cared for, respected, understood by our pharmacy graduates, that's what I know success will be. Just to give you an idea of how these learning outcomes build off of one another, you might recognize in the very brief slide flipping that I did, in year 1, perhaps a student might list or summarize the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada. By year 4, I would love to see our students justify the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada. So you can see how just that first word dictates exactly the extent of knowledge we're looking for in our students. Please read this, memorize it. No. This is just an example also that our college is taking a leadership role nationally. So we have shared our learning outcomes across the nation. Guest lectures have been given at half of all the English-speaking schools of pharmacy in Canada so far. And this document has been shared with the Association of Faculties of Pharmacy of Canada to basically include this right from a national level. Right now, there's nothing mandating Indigenous content inclusion in pharmacy programs, and it is not a specific accreditation standard, so often it gets missed. We might find, I have Googled and searched every document that cultural competency often appears, but you could talk about cultural competency without ever sharing with someone what does First Nations mean, what does Métis mean. We also have a multi-page document. This is just a snapshot of other ideas of how we're bringing this into the classroom and beyond in the College of Pharmacy and Nutrition. Research was mentioned today. Our student practical placements is also something we're looking at. We have a faculty development forum planned for this spring as well. And so many more ideas, and this list is constantly growing. Other advances in this college is revising recruitment materials. We are very lucky and excited to start an entry to practice Doctor of Pharmacy program this fall in 2017 at the University of Saskatchewan. So we will be revising our materials anyway, so this is a perfect opportunity to reintegrate Indigenous content and people. We have established a new student group called SFIRE, or Students for Indigenous Reconciliation and Engagement. And this is only 2 months young with our first session happening next week. Staff and faculty development is planned, and I also mentioned that we are absolutely sharing this across the country as we move forward. Developing and maintaining relationships with our community and partners, so the Saskatoon Tribal Council, Yorkton Tribal Council, Northeast School Division visits have been made there. Also hosting students from various northern, rural, remote, reserve communities, for example, Atakakoop. And this is often done with my colleagues Trudy Unger and Val Arnaud-Peltier. We kind of tag team in medicine, nursing, and pharmacy quite often. And then, of course, classroom offerings have also been delivered in our program so far until we have these learning outcomes solidified into our program. So we've had guest lecturers from the Office of the Treaty Commissioner, also Saskatoon Health Region, and others. I will just disclose, too, that this is, again, as a reminder, is all in the draft stage. We do not have all the answers. I certainly do not have all the answers. I can't speak for every patient out there and every Indigenous person out there, nor can any person in our faculty or staff. So we're just waiting on these community consultations to better inform us what they want their pharmacists to know and do with and for them. I will leave you with this quotation that I absolutely love and look forward to the rest of this panel. Thank you.
Okay, I'm up last. I guess I don't have to introduce myself again, but I'm Kristina Bidwell, the Associate Dean of Aboriginal Affairs in the College of Arts and Science. As I was thinking about this forum today, I was looking again at the TRC calls to action. Education, references to education are found all throughout the calls to action, many of them relating to very specific fields, journalism, medicine, and so on. But I was looking at them trying to pull together, because arts and science is such a broad college, what are the sort of overall messages in the calls to action? And I thought they were to close the gap in educational access and attainment between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people, to provide culturally appropriate curriculum for Indigenous students, to institute Indigenous course or training requirements in many fields of study and practice. We see that appear over and over again in the calls to action. Utilize Indigenous knowledge and teaching methods in the classroom. So not just about the curriculum, but also about what's actually happening in the classroom. And to identify and address teacher training needs relating to the above. And I see that as relating to all of our teachers in our colleges. So how are we in arts and science? Trying to address some of these calls to action. First, I want to talk about our Aboriginal Student Achievement Program. We have over 1,000 Indigenous students right now in arts and science. But when we have looked at how Indigenous students are doing, we find first year is an especially difficult year for Indigenous students, and a lot do leave during or at the end of first year. So we created the Aboriginal Student Achievement Program, a first-year transition program to try to make that first year a really good experience for Indigenous students. And that program has increased our first to second year retention for First Nations students. And we're actually working on a 5-year report on the ASAP program. We'll be releasing some of those exact retention numbers soon. It has increased Indigenous student community in the college, satisfaction, student satisfaction, and use of services throughout the university. So I think that's important. It creates a tailored curriculum for Indigenous students, so both in the selection of courses, but also the instructors in this program work very hard to create a curriculum that works for the Indigenous students in the program. And we work as a team in this program, instructors, advisors, staff. We meet and work together all the time on how we can improve Indigenous achievement in this program. And I just brought in a quotation from a student who was interviewed about the program, who said, and when I finish what I'm here for, that's going to be one of the biggest acknowledgements I want to make, is that if it weren't for ASAP, I probably wouldn't have carried on. So that's a good thing to hear. The next thing I want to speak about is a new program, tentatively called iSTEM, Indigenous Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math, but we're not sure about that title yet, and it's starting this fall. This will be a program to address that Indigenous students are very underrepresented in STEM programs. And so there's a number of reasons for that, and with this program we want to increase Indigenous student access to quality high school level training in science and math. Many students come from communities where they don't have access to quality science courses, okay? Or they don't have access to them at all. We want to create supported pathways to STEM degree programs across the university. We want to create an upper level Indigenous STEM community, because if you look at that quote there, we heard this from a lot of upper year Indigenous STEM students, that they're kind of lonely. So one student said, I'm interested to meet more students like myself in the STEM fields so that we can encourage each other, because if there's Indigenous students in engineering, I don't know about them. You know, if there's Indigenous students in math, I don't know about them, okay? And finally, we're creating interdisciplinary curriculum to engage Indigenous perspectives on STEM. So we're very excited about that new program. I'm not very good at this. Okay. So another thing we're doing throughout the college is creating culturally informed curriculum and teaching methods in many programs. So we have a rapidly growing Department of Indigenous Studies. When I came here, there were 2 faculty members in that department. Now I believe there's 10. And they have a new PhD program as well. We have an Aboriginal Justice and Criminology program in sociology that has graduated many, many Indigenous students. We have a new program, Wichetwin Aboriginal Theatre program in drama. There's a new program being developed in Indigenous governance through political studies. And we have, throughout the college, more than 25 faculty who specialize in Indigenous studies in their various disciplines. So we are also working on implementing an Indigenous learning requirement. This is complex in such a large college with such a diversity of programs. So we're considering various models, a distributed model where students could take a course in their, or select a course from across the college in their degree programs, or maybe a more centralized approach where all students have to go through a particular learning experience. We're still working on that. We want to ensure that we have capacity. So Martin spoke about that also in law, that we don't want to put an excessive burden on a few faculty members to teach these courses. We want to make sure there's a quality student experience and that there's widespread inclusion and engagement. Our faculty are very diverse. We have a diversity of programs. Our students are diverse. We want to make sure that this learning requirement feels relevant and connected to them all. So we are working through a facilitated, structured decision-making process on this because this is a very important decision. We're taking a very careful approach and we're involving students, staff, and faculty in that process. We're also rolling out right now a widespread consultation process, both here on campus as well as in the community, talking about what do people think our students need to be learning in this, as part of this Indigenous learning requirement. And finally, we know that we need to grow our Indigenous capacity. As we look at all these kinds of programs, our own goals, our desire to teach our students in this area, we know we need to grow our capacity. So we have a number of ideas here. One that is coming up, we're going to be starting it this fall, is an Indigenous faculty hiring strategy. Our goal is to grow our percentage of Indigenous faculty from 4%, where it is right now, to 16%, and that's the percentage of the provincial population that is Indigenous, but of course that's a rolling target, right? That may go up in 10 years. So it's an ambitious goal, but we have a plan to do it. We are also thinking about how to engage and support our existing faculty in the long-term process of indigenizing our more than 60 existing degree programs. So again, this is a large project. It's going to take time, and it needs to be done in a way that is relevant to our many, many programs. We are also thinking about Indigenous graduate student support. The student programs I've mentioned here are undergraduate programs, but I really think that we need to begin to think more about Indigenous graduate students who are a small percentage of our graduate student body, but they are our future faculty. So that's something that I want to emphasize. Okay, so I think we have a little bit of time, and I think we can go a little bit longer. We've got 10 minutes, thank you. Oh, an extra 10, great. So we've got 15 minutes or so for questions, comments, suggestions for myself and my colleagues. And there's a mic there in the middle of the room. We would ask you to go to the mic, please, so that we can hear you.
First of all, thank you for sharing all of that information from all of the different colleges on campus. My name is Alora Danon Efmoff. I am the Indigenous Graduate Students Council co-chair and the Aboriginal liaison for the Graduate Students Association. I'm in the Faculty of Arts and Science in a research program in psychology, and I have a question specific to support of Indigenous graduate students. So perhaps Dr. Bidwell would be best to answer this question. A lot of Indigenous students, especially Indigenous graduate students across campus, from my experience here, have been doing research with community on campus, and that research tends to take a lot more time. Graduate students in research programs often feel the pressure to publish very quickly, which isn't often possible with community work. So I'm wondering what type of steps can be taken to support Indigenous graduate students so they can still get the same amount of funding that they need to succeed, given that their publication process is typically a little bit slower because of the work that they're doing. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, when I went to grad school, I had a community-based project in mind, and I got talked out of it because they said it will take too long, you know, and so I think thinking back, that was unfortunate. I agree with you. I see it with my own graduate students that I'm working with, that when you are doing community engagement, that it takes more time, and it takes a particular set of skills that have to be built up, and that's another area where we could maybe do more training of grad students. I guess it's a balance between encouraging students to find a project that is doable, because you don't want to be in grad school forever, and at the same time creating maybe various kinds of supports. So those supports could be, for instance, a course in community-based research that would really help you figure out how to do it. It could involve funding to assist with things like travel. I think it's probably a multi-layered approach, and I'd be really happy to hear any further ideas you might have.
Hello, my name is Dallas Fiddler. I'm the president of the Indigenous Student Council. I just wanted to ask a question of how the University of Saskatchewan is engaging in undergraduate students to give back to the communities. I've talked to a lot of students, and a lot of them face the barrier of wanting to give back to their communities first, and how is the University of Saskatchewan investing in that area?
Do you want to speak, Michelle?
Take the whole thing. Thank you for is this working? Thank you for the question. I have the privilege of working with our TEP programs. The TEP programs are fundamental in ensuring that we are supporting, nurturing, helping develop, for the ITEP program, First Nation teachers for First Nation students. So we do invest a lot of effort, thoughtful effort. We fund those students to go back and to do their practice teaching in community, which results in them staying in community. Off-campus programming, access programming is really helpful, and we have a lot of experience in doing that. Much of this was led long before I took this position, but we continue to support it. Similarly, at the graduate level, there are some very thoughtful programs that assist with the giving back. For example, Dr. Alex Wilson's land-based programming, where students are learning in community, not necessarily where they live, but for some of them where they live, and learning to continue those traditional and cultural practices being taught by the land. And that's just a few of the ones that come to mind, but I'll hand the mic over to my colleagues who likely have other ideas.
I'll comment briefly in the area of teaching and learning and what we're doing for student engagement in the College of Pharmacy and Nutrition. So I just spoke briefly about that. Having the faculty guidance and support has been critical, and I see Dr. Jason Perepelkin in here as well. So him and I have been helping to assist with the students who themselves identified that exact want that you just described. So we're there for things like room booking and basically asking our dean for money. Keish, thank you very much for that so far, to help get some of this programming and engagement off the ground. And like I said, we're only 2 months into this. I would love to see some graduate student involvement in that too. And as we continue to work on our teaching and learning components, Indigenous components in the college, we will be seeking the guidance and feedback from that student group too.
I can probably speak briefly from the College of Nursing for our undergraduate students about giving back to the community. Our programme is delivered up in the north, and students that enter that programme study up in the north, and they have the clinical placements up there, and hopefully they stay and work up there. And I think up to now, I mean, I'm sure Lois will help me out here because she's more aware of that data, is I think most of them have remained within that community up to now. So we've been quite successful there in our Learn Where You Live approach, if that helps.
And yeah, Dallas, I would just add that I do think there's a lot of potential through experiential learning that students could maybe get credit for various ways that they give back to their communities. And I know that's something the Gwen Moss Center is really interested in developing, is our capacity across the university for experiential learning. So I think it's a great idea.
Adam Bax-Jones, the Interim Dean of College of Graduate and Postdoctoral Studies. I just wanted to comment to Iladoran's question about graduate scholarships. So we recognize that different disciplines take different times in their programs. And so one of the things we're doing, and I'm glad that she's offered to join me in, we're setting up a terms of reference for an Aboriginal award, and this is permanent funding that has come from the Vice-Provost Teaching and Learning's office and my college, roughly in the region of about $150,000 a year. And so the whole purpose of that award is to do exactly what you say, is to be a different scholarship than we usually see within the university graduate scholarships, and put together terms of reference which will hopefully address the issues you're talking about.
Thank you, Adam.
Is this thing on? Mm-hmm. Wake up. Just kidding. My name is Dallas Pelly. I'm an undergraduate student in the College of Education. And I first just want to say, as a student who's come through this university, when I first arrived here, I wasn't proud of being an Indigenous person. It was only through the hard work, the tremendous staff in the Indian Teacher Education Program in the College of Education that I stand here proud of who I am. I think back to the work of my grandmother, the deceased elder Pauline Pelly, who always made it her life goal to know that her grandkids and those who she raised wouldn't have that. And so as yeah, just I want to say thank you, first off, for the tremendous amount of work that all of this takes. You know, it doesn't come from policy or from trying to, you know, implement all these strategies. It comes from the heart, and I see that, and I've experienced that as a student in this university. So thank you. One thing that I want to just encourage everyone in this room is when we're talking about reconciliation, it always has to come back to the land. And I carry this sweetgrass with me because it's a picture of our people that we, when you walk and it bends, the sweetgrass bends, but it doesn't break. And that's the spirit of my ancestors, that I can be here and stand here and encourage all of us with that message, because no matter what we do, we will not break. Indigenous people will not break. There's nothing that you can do or undo or take away that will break the spirit. So a call for me is I'm trying to have a reconciliation posture of connecting to the land, of having a relationship with the land. So I would just encourage everyone in this room, the presenters panel, to when we're engaging in reconciliation, to always think about that land, because that's what treaty was about. And that's what it's about. It's about our connection to the land, and it's a relationship. And that's not policy, that's a relationship. So I don't know how to do that in a curriculum. I don't know how to write a policy to say that, but I just want to encourage everyone just to think about the reconciliation posture being tied to land. The great comedian, Anishinaabe scholar, Ryan McMahon says, there can be no reconciliation without land. Hi, miigwech.
Thanks, Dallas.
Hello, my name is Jaden Hawley, and I'm a second-year SUNTEP student in the College of Education. I'm aware that one of the initiatives of the university in indigenizing itself was to make Indigenous 107 a mandatory course for all students. And talking with some of my non-Indigenous friends and friends who are in mainstream courses, of course, as part of SUNTEP, I take Indigenous Studies as part of a small class, but some of the concerns of my friends have been that class sizes have been really big, and although changing professors and changing lecturers can give a wide variety of perspectives, I've heard complaints that the constant changing of professors has made it difficult to really engage deeply with any one instructor, and that my friends have lacked access to a safe space in engaging with some of the stereotypes that they might hold towards Indigenous people. So I am curious to know if the university has made any steps in readdressing or reconsidering how Indigenous 107 is being carried out and taught out to the student body at large.
Okay. Thank you so much. The questions that you are asking are great questions. They're exactly the questions that we're asking ourselves as we think about making a course requirement for all students in arts and science. And one thing we don't want to do is create a bad student experience, sort of, you know, by making the class too big, or by making it so that the students can't feel that connection to the instructor and to their material. So that comes back to some of the things we're really thinking about, and I don't have an answer yet, but around capacity, right? How large do these classes have to be to be able to, for all of our students to have this learning experience? Should it be one course, or should it be many courses, so that students can choose? How do we make it an engaging, relevant experience, not just something, oh no, I have to take this course and get it over with, right? So yeah, thank you. What you've said just reinforces the importance of the work we're trying to do, and I don't have the answers. I will say that the Department of Indigenous Studies obviously has a huge amount of expertise, but we cannot put, in my opinion, the burden on them to educate the entire university. They're not, that there needs to be a broader approach. Are there any further questions? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
What a great start. Thank you. Thank you so much to our panelists, to Jaris and Kristina for planning and moderating such a wonderful session. I wanted to make the comment that in the role that I have as in teaching and learning, I move around the campus and I get to hear all of these things all of the time. I get to live these things out. But I realize that not everyone is in that same position. And so one of the things that I was so excited about today is that you would begin to hear about all of the incredible things that are going on. And you're hearing today about 6 colleges. There's many more things happening. These are just 6 that we wanted to bring forward and to highlight. So thank you so much for that. We're going to go to a short break, about a 10-minute break. But just before we do that, I just wanted to point out to you that on the side here beside me and in the back corner, we have some scrawl on the walls up for you. And we've got 2 questions posted. And throughout the day, we would really invite you to go and scrawl something on the wall. So 2 questions. The first one is, what are you prepared to commit to in working towards reconciliation? So what is the individual commitment that you are prepared to make here at the University of Saskatchewan? That's one of the questions. And the second question is, what do we need to be doing collectively as a university? So if you could give us some of that information, share your thinking with us, we will take that away. And we will use that, all of us, we will make that available in summary form, and we will use that going forward. So don't forget the scroll on the wall. There's refreshments at the back. I'm going to ask if we can reconvene in about 10 minutes. We're just a little bit off schedule, but, you know, par for the course, of course. Thank you so much.